All right. And then once you share that link, I will go ahead and share it on all the different social media platforms.
Once I share it, okay. What I generally do first is just to get the Facebook link.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, then I share that on Facebook. I'll put it into the StreamYard. I'll send it to you in chat.
Sounds good. Yeah, this is a fun platform. I've used StreamYard just a handful of times, but it seems to work well once you get it going every time. All right, so here.
Yes. Okay, I do think it works well. Okay, I don't have the YouTube actually up. So if you have it up, then you can share that as well. I'm going to be sharing Facebook.
All right. Hey, Dolores, how are you doing?
Hey, Dolores, how are you? We are sharing things out before we start.
I've used StreamYard just a hand. All right, so.
Yeah, you used it a handful of times, you were saying?
Oh, yes, sir. I was just hopping onto your stream, grabbing a direct link to the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and get this shared on Facebook, then on Twitter.
Okay, there's also a YouTube stream going out, and there's a KRTD media stream going out.
Oh, very cool.
Okay, so we're streaming to 3 places.
Hey, Kay, how's it going? Glad to hear you're doing well, Dolores.
Hi, Kay, how are you? I'm just sharing to various groups now.
Yeah, we're going to have a great discussion tonight. I'm really excited. We're going to talk about, oh man, I guess a whole bunch of different things. And like you said, you know, this is going to be in depth. I'm in no hurry, sir. You have me as late as you want.
Oh, that'll be great. Okay, so you'll be here until you get tired.
Oh, or until you get tired.
Well, I warned you ahead of time, that's going to be difficult.
I see someone's already commenting, go start on YouTube. Thanks for hopping on. Do you have the YouTube link that I can share on my Twitter? Because if I share the Facebook link on Twitter, people usually don't come.
Okay, Steve, if you can share the YouTube link, that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you can just toss that into chat, I can copy and paste it.
Okay, let me see if I got that. Oh, Steve is asking, are there Medicare for All squabbles? There have been Medicare for All squabbles now since May, as I think you know. Some of the MMT people coming out, okay, of RP, do not want to see a state level program. And of course, the whole Washington people have a state level initiative going. And they think they can do it out there. And I think they can too. And so there's a disagreement then within the MMT group but not a disagreement in RP as far as I know. So what's going on is that there are some MMT people that agree with the Washington crowd, and there are lots of other MMT people that don't.
Hey,
Carmen, hi Carmen, how are you? Okay, and Go Start, how are you? Go Start, also known as Steve. If you could share the YouTube link, that would be very useful for us, please.
yeah, if you could just copy the link to the YouTube live stream and just paste it in the chat right there, I can go ahead and grab that and share it on Twitter. All right. Yeah, I'd love to talk about Medicare for All a lot, actually, because I have so much to say about it, and there's so much going on with, like you say, the MMT squabbles. And it's just one of the most important things in our country is healthcare, and it's really a shame that Americans are dying because they can't afford prescription drugs, while the pharmaceutical companies who are selling these drugs are profiting billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Right. Okay, everybody share out, okay, as much as you can. I think we're going to start our discussion, since it seems to me that we're about there in terms of starting our discussion. Okay, so my guest tonight is Dan Whitfield, who is running for Senate in the state of Arkansas as a Democrat, and who has lots of good things for us tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan for an overview of himself, his issues, why he's running. And we're going to do that for a few minutes. Then we're going to get into issues and into platform, okay, and get into some of the deeper questions. So, Dan, you can take it away.
For sure. I'm still trying to find the YouTube link, though. Should I just be searching Joe Firestone on YouTube?
You should be searching Joseph Firestone, okay, on YouTube. Joseph space Firestone. Yeah, my YouTube channel is a little more formal for some reason. I think I got that channel first. And when I got that channel, I was a knowledge management consultant. So I'm in that area. I was a little more formal.
Oh, there we go. All right. I found the link.
I was a knowledge management consultant.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. So now I've got this link here. Let me share. Let's see here. I'm going to make a tweet right now live with y'all. Okay, so
thank you.
Join us for this amazing conversation with Joe Firestone, where we will be talking about, let's say, progressive politics.
You betcha.
Heck yeah. There, y'all just joined me for a tweet live. All right. And that is tweeted. Hopefully there's no grammatical errors, and let's go ahead and start. So my name's Dan Whitfield, and I'm a progressive Democrat running in Arkansas for the United States Senate. My opponent is Senator John Boozman. And a lot of people may not know who John Boozman is. He's very good at flying under the radar. In fact, there was actually a poll recently in Arkansas for approval or disapproval over him. And I believe he had a 31% approval rating, 38% disapproval rating, and, you know, somewhere in the mid 30s for don't know, because a lot of people don't know who this guy is.
That hurts. That really hurts.
Yeah, it really does. But
31% approval rating, boy, that's in Harry Truman territory.
But what's really important is to understand that he does vote 99% of the time alongside with Tom Cotton, and we all know who Tom Cotton is. He votes 98% of the time along with Mitch McConnell. We all know who Mitch McConnell is, and that should tell us all we need to know about whether or not he is actually helping his constituents here in Arkansas or not. And unfortunately, he's just really not. So this is a very important race because Arkansas, a lot of people would say, well, Arkansas, you know, that's a red state. There's no way a Democrat's going to flip a red seat in Arkansas. But that's really not true. We have the largest like a demographic of voters in Arkansas is actually independents. And we did have two Democratic senators before Senator John Bozeman and Senator Tom Cotton. So this is a historically blue state, but unfortunately, when the Koch brothers dumped a $10 million donation into our state, it helped flip our state red and sold us out to the GOP. But we can win. And, just looking at John Bozeman's disapproval rating, that goes to show right there that people are ready for change here in Arkansas specifically. So this is a very, interesting race to be part of. I'm really excited to be taking part with the Democratic Party in this historic race where we're actually going to flip Arkansas blue in 2022. It's going to be amazing.
It will be amazing. if you can flip Arkansas in 2022, it will be truly amazing.
It will be. And you know what?
We'll all be in your corner to make that happen.
Oh, I appreciate it, sir. We're really struggling out here. We are one of the lowest income states. I think we're like ranked 49 to 50 for income. We're ranked like 42 to 45 for education and healthcare.
I wanted to ask you about that. On your website, it said that you are 49th in income, but have something like the third highest taxes in the nation.
Yes, we have. Actually, I think we're the highest sales tax in the entire country now.
Well, the highest sales tax.
Yes, sir. And it's a shame. It's really tough. I mean, I live in a little town called Bella Vista, and we have federal taxes, state taxes, county taxes, municipal taxes, city taxes. I mean, they just keep throwing on more and more and more taxes to us. And it's just really hard when the majority of people here are middle, lower classes, and we're all working class people just trying to get by. And the fact that this is a right to work state doesn't make it any better. We still have, waiters that are making $2.30 an hour plus tips, and it's not enough for a lot of people to get by. And
so where's the money going, actually?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of it is going to our budget surplus. Our governor, Asa Hutchinson, is really proud right now that we have a $980 million surplus in our state. At the same time, we are at the child poverty rate in Arkansas is just insane at 25%. So 25% of the children here in Arkansas are food insecure and go to bed with hungry stomachs.
Let me ask you. Where's the surplus going?
Well, what they're going to do, they're talking about tax cuts for the rich. That's the rumor. And we're going to see exactly what happens with it. But the problem is there are a lot of things that we can do with that money that are really going to help our Kansans. For $240 million, we could end hunger in our state, and we are one of the poorest states. So that would be a good use of $240 million of the 980 surplus. Our infrastructure is absolutely terrible in our state. There are so many potholes. I believe we have like 20% of the worst bridges in the entire country. There are a lot of problems here that we can use that money to solve, but unfortunately, the GOP that's in charge of our state is just, hoarding that money to the point where hopefully next year they can be like, well, we've got all this extra surplus, so we're going to do some tax breaks for, of course, the wealthy and not the working class people. They're not going to put it back into our educational system. They're not going to put it back into our healthcare, into our infrastructure, or anything like that. They're not helping the people. And that's a really big problem. Now, these are all state problems. I am running for a federal seat, so there's not a whole lot I can do about that.
That's right. We are at this point, I think, at your vision, okay, and your overview of what you would like to do.
Yeah, sure. So I think what we really need to look at with representatives in our representative republic, or what used to be a representative republic before our representatives sold out to special interests and instead started representing those interests and not the people. Sorry, I'll try not to get off too much on that, but it's a really important topic to me, financial corruption in our government. I really want to see our country
wax about it a little. That's fine.
I really want to see our government start focusing on the people, putting people before profits, because our government is supposed to be by the people for the people, but instead it has become an institution that is by special interests for special interests. So I want to focus on policies that are really going to help Americans and Arkansans, such as my number one policy I support is healthcare for all. I know we were already started to hit on what Medicare for all is. I like to call it healthcare for all, not Medicare for all, because realistically, Medicare for all has nothing to do with Medicare. And when you use that name, Medicare for all, immediately people on Medicare are like, well, I've got Medicare and this is terrible. I don't have dental. I don't have vision. I have to pay for supplemental insurance. It's no bueno. So healthcare for all is what I support, which is Medicare for all with a different name. But it's so important here in Arkansas because we know that the number one cause of bankruptcy in America is medical debt. 60% of all bankruptcies in our country are filed because of medical bills. And what makes that such a terrible number is 70% of those people have medical insurance. They're going to work, they're doing everything right, they're paying high premiums, high deductibles, and high copays, and then they get sick and they lose everything. And this is absolutely unacceptable in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. We cannot be treating people in this way. So we know what the problem is. The problem is medical debt is the number one cause of bankruptcy. So what we need to be doing is looking for the cause of the problem and solving the cause and not just adding Band-Aids onto it. I mean, the Affordable Care Act did help in many ways. It saved my sister's life. She needed a brain surgery after she had already had two. And because of her pre-existing condition, she couldn't get insurance coverage. And the Affordable Care Act allowed her to get that coverage to get that brain surgery, which saved her life. So, I mean, the Affordable Care Act was life-changing and life-saving for many people. But the problem with the ACA is that it was written by health lobbyists. And it does still put profits before people.
Right. And there were a number of other things. Okay. First of all, it's not only bankruptcies, it's mortgage foreclosures. Okay. It's also divorces. Mm-hmm. It's also fatalities for people who don't have insurance. One of the big problems with the ACA was that it left a lot of people on the table, as it were, uninsured. Mm-hmm. Okay. And those people died. By some calculations that I did a few years back, 356,000 people died between 2010 and 2016. I'm not counting 2009. Okay. It was possible for Obama, had he wanted to have passed H.R. 676 in 2009. He could have had it implemented by the start of 2010. Mm-hmm. Then there would have been no fatalities due to lack of insurance. Instead, there were 356,000. Your sister, thank God, was saved by ACA. But 356,000 people over those years were not.
It made healthcare more accessible. It just didn't make it more affordable. And a lot of people who are independent contractors, who are self-employed, they can't afford to pay the high rates of the ACA. It's not feasible to be paying 15 to 20 to 25 or even 30% of your income just for medical insurance. And we know what the problem is, and now we need a solution. We've been using a private healthcare structure for a century now, and it hasn't changed. Medicare for all or healthcare for all is really the answer in my eyes. It's not free. We are going to pay for it, but we're going to pay substantially less than what we're paying now. So I'm going to go through and break down some numbers.
Let me put in something else into your hopper here, okay?
Yes, sir.
Just earlier this evening, I happened to be looking at the CMS site. I was looking for their projection for national expenditures on healthcare, total national expenditures for 2021. Mm-hmm. That figure came out to be something like $4.12 trillion. Okay, that's what we're spending on the present system. Since there's no deficit spending which is attached to the present system, that means it's all coming out of our pockets in the form of taxes, premiums, co-pays, and also deductibles. Okay, every last cent is coming out of private sector pockets. Okay, so the question is, how much would we be likely to save if we had HR 1976 passed, okay, and ready to go? How much would we be likely to save in 2022? So that's a question.
I haven't looked at those numbers, though. Unfortunately, I haven't done that research yet. I can't give you those numbers.
Okay, but in round figures, okay, in round figures, okay, I highlighted a comment here. I think I did that unintentionally, so I'll take it off the highlight. But
and we will talk about that, Carmen, I promise.
Yeah, we will get to all the comments later. I always do get to all the comments. Okay, people know that who come to this stream, that I go through every single one of the comments. Okay, in any case, okay, in nations comparable to us, for example, Canada, as a percentage of GDP, they spend about 11%, okay, of GDP. We are now getting close to 20%, okay, of GDP. So we would be likely to save something like, okay, let's say we could do it for 2/3 for 2/3 of what we spend now. That would still be more than Canada, okay, because they're at 11%. If we were at 18%, as we were, okay, a year ago, and we cut it down by 1/3, we would still be at 12%, okay, of GDP now. Okay, so let's say we can save 1/3. Okay, 1/3 or 4.2 trillion is $2.8 trillion, and everybody would be covered. We would save $1.4 trillion out of our pockets. That doesn't take into account the possibility of deficit spending and the federal government creating the money for deficit spending without any offsets.
So this is $1.4 trillion per year?
$1.4 trillion a year. Over 10 years, we're talking $14 trillion in savings from our pockets.
Yes. Now, these are numbers I've heard before. They always talk about, the GOP, well, healthcare for all is going to cost us, say, $30 trillion. But what they don't talk about is how much more than that the private system is going to cost us in that same period of time.
Yes. And if the system we have now, as it now stands, is costing us $4.2 trillion this year, without any increases in cost, if everything stayed absolutely the same, it would cost $42 trillion for us to remain with this particular system. Okay, so it's obvious we're going to save lots and lots, okay, of money, and we're going to cover everybody, and there will be no deaths due to lack of insurance, and there will be no inadequate insurance. So,
and to break that down, to make it really easy for people to understand, because people are always, wondering what's the, the bottom line for them. What's it going to cost my family for, health insurance through this plan? So the way that we're going to pay for healthcare for all is it's going to be 4% of your income after $29,000. And as a representative of Arkansas, our average household income last year was $48,000. So if you're making under $29,000, then like Medicaid right now, it's not going to be at any cost to you. You're still going to get healthcare, medical, dental, vision, hearing, all those different things at no cost. Now, if you make more than $29,000, it will be 4% of your income after $29,000. So for the average Arkansan household, what that means is you take 48,000, subtract 29, which is 19,000, and 4% of 19,000 comes out to $760 a year, or $63 a month. So for the average Arkansan family, you're going to cover your whole household for $63 a month. And what a lot of people also don't realize is this does add a $200 cap on prescription drug costs. So if you fill your first prescription, if you're like a type 1 diabetic, you fill your first prescription in January, it's $200. Your insulin for the rest of the year is free. So that's really important to understand. Now, for someone...
So let me ask you then.
Yes, sir.
Is that the specific plan that is in your platform?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so that's not the same as HR 1976, right?
No, it is not. That is Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All health plan.
It's actually Pramila Jayapal's health plan, okay, that was introduced into the House. I don't think Bernie has introduced a corresponding bill into the Senate yet for this year.
Let me see here.
Okay, he did introduce a corresponding bill to Jayapal's in the 2019 2020 session. Yes, he did. But the number of that bill then, I forget what the number was last time. But now the House number is HR 1976, and he has not introduced a corresponding bill to that. He still has to do that.
Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and drop this into the comments here. Oh, it won't let me.
Oh, you should be able to drop this into the chat.
It'll let me drop it into private chat. There we go. But this right here is, the how we're going to pay for it, and it was broken all down. Let's see here. Green New Deal, Medicare for All. So yeah, this last one was according to a February 15th, 2020 study by epidemiologists at Yale University.
Right. So you give a link to Bernie Sanders. Okay. And I transferred the link to a comment chat. So you should be seeing it right now in the comment chat.
And I will look up this Jayapal Pramila and then the HR 1976 and familiarize myself with that, because it's always good to know. Always learning.
Yes, it's good to know. That's a little better. She improved it in certain ways for the 170 Congress. Okay.
But the point being is that we know medical debt is the number one problem, and we have to do something about it. We have to make sure that we are putting people before profits. I was a cable guy for 5 years, and I still remember going into to fix her cable TV, and she was sitting at her table cutting her pills with a razor blade. And I'm like, thinking, oh, what is this, drug addict doing? I'm like, so what are you doing? She's like, well, this is my prescription. I have to take this every day to keep my, I don't remember if it was blood sugar. It was something to keep something in place so that I don't die. And she made the decision of, am I going to refill my life-saving prescription bill? And some people may, look down on her and be like, well, why did she choose her cable bill? But they don't, you have to understand. And if they don't have family, they don't have friends, that's really all they have at their house when they get to an older age. And that had to make, but that's not the kind of decision any American should ever have to make in our country. That was when it really hit me.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
But let's see. So that's healthcare. That's one of the policies I support. I would say my top policy, because are having this issue. I travel all across my state and talk to so many different people, Democratic, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green, it doesn't matter. Healthcare always comes up every single time. And at first, when I talk about healthcare for all, especially if it's a conservative Republican, socialism. But when I sit there and I explain how we're going to pay for it and how it's going to save their family money, by the end of the conversations, they're always like, do you have any literature? What's your website? They're actually being very responsive. And I've got Republicans considering voting Democratic for the first time in their lives, which is just because of healthcare. It's such an important issue. And then let's see, what's another good progressive issue I support?
The Green New Deal.
The Green New Deal is so important. I mean, the climate crisis it's unignorable at this point. I'm sure you all recently saw the video from Flagstaff where the cars just being rushed down the street in this river, basically, from floodwaters. We all see what's happening in California right now, where Portland, Oregon now has a temperature record higher than Austin.
Oh, that was amazing. That was amazing.
Oh, man. It's terrible that it's happening, but at least we can use these devastating events and occurrences to try to help people who don't believe in climate change understand that it is real and it's affecting us. When you have they have to. We can't afford not to at this point. I mean, she's my motivation behind everything I do in the office. I want to make sure that we leave her a world that's inhabitable, an inhabitable planet that they can actually enjoy some of the things that we enjoy, like having food. A lot of people, important it is the insect population on our planet, the reefs, how incredibly important reefs are, and we percent of the reefs on our entire planet. I mean, these areas hold, I believe it's like 25% of all sea life. These are really important things that people aren't paying attention to. Yeah. Last year in Australia, when they had a wildfire that killed 1 billion animals, 1 billion. This isn't some conspiracy. This isn't some joke and a Democratic hoax. This is real. And the only reason that we don't acknowledge this in the first place, and we didn't start, is because the fossil fuel industry has paid lobbyists hundreds, maybe even billions of dollars by this point, sure that our legislators are voting against what our best interests are, that they're spreading disinformation. We have legislators who have money in the fossil fuel industry, who are invested in them, who are invested in oil, and then these same legislators who have grow are voting against what's best for us for their own financial gain. And I mean, these are big problems that not a lot of people are talking about. So it's extremely important to me. I've got, a bunch of different ideas. The Green New Deal is great. We have to make sure we do have a federal jobs guarantee. We have to make some drastic measures if keep our planet habitable. And honestly, I really are dying. Oh my gosh. It's just insane. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be too late. It truly is. I mean, there's some.
So speaking of doing something about it.
Yes, sir.
We are seeing, we're seeing different plans put forward. First, of course, we're right in the middle of the infrastructure struggle now.
Yeah.
And part of the $3.5 trillion bill is supposed to be devoted to green concerns, okay, of one kind or another. God bless you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, but we don't yet know quite how much because the details, still have to be laid out. But what we do know is that this is nowhere near the $10 trillion that's being put forward by the Thrive Agenda people.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere near the $16.2 trillion that was put forward by Bernie Sanders in his campaign. It's nowhere near the $41.2 trillion Howie Hawkins put forward in his campaign, okay, of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So the question, okay, I'm getting to is with respect to your own Green New Deal plan or your own version, okay, of the Green New Deal plan, what sort of ballpark of costs do you think it will take to secure our survival and to meet the climate emergency?
The first thing to understand is that the more money that we spend with the federal government to combat climate change, the more money our government spends, the more money is going to go into infrastructure, into jobs, into salaries, and into supplies needed to do this manufacturing production. The more money we spend, the more money will be going into your pockets. We have to understand that first. Now, I think the real challenge is convincing people how our federal government budgets is very different than the way that they budget their own household. We have a fiat currency backed by a sovereign nation. So we need to make sure that we aren't worried about necessarily how much debt we're going to go into. We are the only modernized nation, we have the only fiat currency with a debt ceiling, the only one in the entire world. We know historically that when the government spends more money, we get out of recessions, we get out of depressions, because that money is going into our pockets, into the economy. Tackling this issue is going to be with reallocating current funding, because a lot of the GOP, the Republicans, aren't going to want to allocate funding and increase the deficit, even though they've increased the debt ceiling like 5 times fold since most of them have been in office. Reallocation is going to be key. I would really like to see 100% of fossil fuel subsidies reallocated for 3 years towards renewable energies. If we reallocated fossil fuel subsidies towards putting solar panels on every house, towards building new thorium reactors in our nuclear power plants, making sure that our dams have hydroelectric capabilities, then after just a few years of doing this, we wouldn't need fossil fuels anymore, and we wouldn't have to subsidize them anymore. But
Right.
again, the problem, it comes back to lobbyists. It comes back to the fossil fuel industry putting money into legislators' pockets to keep it the way it is.
Yes, very true. But I have a question with respect to fossil fuel subsidies. How much do we spend on those each year?
It's a good question. And I don't think you'll ever be able to find the exact answer for that, because a lot of the money
that ballpark.
Between all of the fossil fuel industries, coal, gas, oil, everything, I mean, I would say well over $1 trillion a year.
Okay, so we would have $1 trillion we could reallocate to something else for people. Okay, so that's good, but it's still far from what we're going to have to spend per year on the Green New Deal to make it go. Okay, our guest is Dan Whitfield, who is running for the Senate in Arkansas as a Democrat, Steve. Steve Wolfbrandt came in late, and he wanted to know who you are.
Hey, Steve, how's it going? Yeah, so when I look at like Greenpeace.org, they're saying that we only give around $20 billion every year, but I know that is absolutely false. It's just so hard because they give money in ways that we don't know. A good example would be like the defense budget is really more than $715 billion a year, because we will say invest money in the energy department to research nuclear weapons and things like that. So it's really tough. But hey, Steve, how's it going? Let me see here. But there's a lot of different things we can do to combat the climate crisis. We really have to switch to renewables. We really have to make sure that we are not only, here into our state in Arkansas, but focusing on high-speed rail entire country. We're really world in that aspect, and that's going to take a lot of cars off the road, and it's going to allow people who live in rural areas to work in urban areas and make more money as well.
Yes. Okay, but also the job guarantee is going to rev up the economy in the rural areas and make rural areas actually more attractive for people to settle in. It'll wake up the economy. Those areas will not be left behind any longer.
Yes, sir. And what COVID has also done for us is it has shown us the need for high-speed internet in these rural areas, making sure that everybody does have high-speed internet. We should have fiber to every home within the next couple of years. There's no excuse not to. By doing this,
actually, that might be part of the infrastructure bill that they're putting forward right now. I really hope to see that in this infrastructure bill.
I hope to see that as well. It's just hard to see exactly compromise that's so far down. I'm not even sure what's in the current bill that they're talking about passing.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure yet either because the details haven't been fleshed out. But you said something just a little while ago. Okay, you were talking about, of course, the debt, and correctly pointing out that from a fiscal point of view, if you know how the federal government money works, the level of the debt and the level of the debt to GDP ratio are not important. In other words, that doesn't have anything to do with sustainability. We could get rid of the debt ceiling in an afternoon if Congress wanted to. Then we wouldn't have any more debt ceiling crises. However, if we look at the situation as it currently exists, the existence of the debt and the level of the debt and the level of the debt to GDP ratio are issues. People freak out about that. And the people who stand to benefit from austerity budgeting are constantly trying to terrorize the population by showing them graphics, of various kinds, infographics, which say, you owe $65,000. Every member of your family owes $65,000 to pay off this debt. And yeah, we have been trying to educate people. I've been trying to educate people since 2010 to the idea that not a single one of them owes $1. Those were debts that were contracted by the federal government. And if they have sense enough not to let the federal government tax them for those debts, then the federal government will still have to come up with the money to pay. It's in the Constitution. It's in the 14th Amendment that all the debts have to be honored by the federal government. And of course, Article 1, Section 8 says that the federal government can create as much currency as it wants to. So we know this is true, but after 12 years trying to educate people that this is the case, I know the education is hard.
It's difficult. Well, because if you think about it, from the time we're young children, we're conditioned with Keynesian economy. I mean, that's just the way that we're brought up, we're taught. And it's really hard to get people to open up their minds enough to look at something that is going to really challenge the beliefs of everything they've ever known with how finances work in the federal government. That's why even though Bernie Sanders' economic advisor, Stephanie Kelton, he rarely talks about MMT, and he still talks about, taxes, lowering taxes for the working class, raising taxes for the rich, and reallocation of money, because that's what people understand. Even though the fact is,
he talks about pay-fors. He always talks about the pay-fors. But even though he knows at the federal level the pay-fors don't pay for anything.
It's just because it's hard, because a lot of people don't understand. That's why candidates I know I shouldn't. I've been advised not to talk about it because it scares people. It can make you uncomfortable when you don't understand what someone's talking about, when you just think it's wrong.
Yes,
but It is very important for us to talk about, and it's very important for our legislators to understand what MMT is, as well as Keynesian economic theory. Uh, it's just always and keep educating ourselves because we always have so much to learn. Randall Wray is my favorite economist. I love listening to Randall Wray debate Keynesians. It just he makes my heart happy.
He's one of my favorite economists too. I used to blog at the UMKC site from 2012 to 2016.
Man.
And I have hundreds of posts there. Okay, I've been into MMT since the early part of 2010. So, and I've published in ebook form 7 books, okay, that apply MMT to various issues at this point. Okay, they are on Amazon. So, this is an area, okay, but know well. One of the things I know is that one doesn't have to talk about the debt, that one doesn't have to talk about increasing the debt, and yet one can still deficit spend. And there are 2 ways of doing that. The first way, okay, is that you can mint a platinum coin. For example, $100 trillion, like 1 ounce platinum coin. Mm-hmm. If Joe Biden wanted it done, he could have that done tomorrow. Within 3 days, he could have it up to the Fed in New York for deposit in the public enterprise fund account of the mint. The day after that, that could be the seniorage, which would be $100 trillion minus $3,500 in rough terms, could be swept into the Treasury spending account, placing virtually $100 trillion into the Treasury spending account. Now, you couldn't spend $100 trillion because the money has to be appropriated by Congress in order to spend it. But the part of it you can spend, of course, is the part of it you need to pay down all of the debt to zero as it falls due. It would not be a good idea to do this all in one fell swoop, because that would probably be inflationary. But if you paid it off as it falls due, it would not be inflationary at all, because the federal government owes that money anyway, plus the interest. Okay, but if you have the $100 trillion sitting there, then over a period of 6 months or so, trillions of dollars of the national debt would be paid down, and everybody could see it was getting paid down. Okay.
It would be life-changing for the American people. I mean, we could wipe out poverty in an instant.
It would be life-changing for the American people to see that the national debt is not a problem, and to see the debt to GDP ratio declining precipitously within 6 months' time. It would put the terrorists out of business, the debt terrorists. They couldn't speak about it anymore. This is something Joe Biden could do. People who are visible have to urge him to do it. That's one thing that could happen. A second way of handling this is through Congress itself. I should add here, by the way, the reason why the $1 trillion coin is possible is because Congress passed a law in 1996 which made it possible. Okay, it's never been used, but this is based on a 1996 currency law, okay, that Congress passed. Okay, but to go on to the second way, okay, the second way I call overt congressional financing. Hi there, Shane, right now. says, "Hey Joe, hey Dan."
Yeah, I
So
see.
the way overt congressional financing works is you can put two sentences, okay, into any money bill. Those sentences, okay, would mandate the Federal Reserve to top up the federal spending account as soon as the appropriation bill is passed. Things do not work in that way right now. In other words, the way things work is Congress appropriates money,
Mhm.
but the Treasury Department has to find that money and then spend it into the private sector, into the non-government sector. Okay, how does it do that? Well, okay, it finds that money because the Fed responds to tax deposits by creating new money and placing the new money into the Treasury spending account. And it responds to bond sales, okay, in the same way. It destroys the money from the bond sales and it destroys the money from the tax receipts, but it creates new money in response to those, okay, on a dollar for dollar basis. So that's two ways in which the Treasury spending account is topped up. But there are other ways. If the federal government sells property, then the revenue from the sales is processed into the Treasury spending account in the same way as the tax revenue and other revenue. Okay, it basically, goes into a deposit. Okay, in the course of settlement, okay, that money is destroyed, but new money, okay, is issued.
Mhm.
So it happens, okay, in that way. Okay, there are also 3 or 4 other ways in which it's possible to put money into the Treasury spending account. Okay, but the simplest way is for the Congress to place those 2 sentences into every money bill. And then the money would be there from the start. Okay, so if Congress passed a budget of $7 trillion, okay, for a particular year, at the point of passage, the Federal Reserve would respond by creating $7 trillion and placing it into the Treasury spending account. Then there would be no question of debt ceiling crises, okay, or crises to find the money to deficit spend. In other words, in certain situations, when Congress has appropriated more money than it is in the Treasury spending account, of course, the Treasury spending account starts to run low, okay, on money. If there's deficit spending involved, tax revenue won't cover it. So now we have to sell debt instruments, okay, to cover it, to place the new money into the Treasury spending account. If the appropriations money was placed into the account up front, doing things like that would not be necessary anymore. And even though it doesn't really matter in the end if we sell debt instruments from a fiscal point of view, it matters from a political point of view because people get spooked by the debt. So if we want to remove that political problem, we do it either through platinum coins or through overt congressional financing. Those are 2 methods, okay, that we can use to do that.
And these
So,
are important conversations to be having because I'm sure a lot of people, well, so you're familiar with MMT, so maybe your followers understand what's going on.
they do.
But for some of my followers who don't, these are really important discussions that we need to be having with our family members as well, and explaining to them how the national debt and how federal currency really works. That way, they aren't also falling victim to being scared with this giant debt deficit and ceiling number.
Yeah, that's very, very important. It's very, very important to tell people that. It's very, very important to get them to believe you. And it's very, very hard, okay, to get them to believe you. I think Stephanie did a great job in her book. Okay, I know her fairly well, actually. She recruited me to blog, okay, at the UMKC site because she was the first editor, okay, of that blog. So that's how I became a blogger there. Okay.
Gotcha.
So, huh?
I didn't realize I would be having a conversation with an MMT guru this evening.
Well, I'm not generally considered one of the gurus, okay, of MMT. That honor goes to Warren Mosler, to Randy, okay, to Bill Mitchell, to Stephanie, to Scott, Fulweiler, I think, okay, is someone, okay, who merits that, okay, at this point. But I've done my share, okay, of education. But since I learned MMT in the early part of 2000, okay, and 10, I've written lots and lots, okay, of blog posts, and as I say, the 7 books as well. So that is one of my things, but I'm not an economist. I'm a political scientist. As a political scientist, my education was in the area of comparative politics, okay, and international relations. I also have a background in constitutional law, and I wanted to talk to you about that, okay, as well. In relation to your getting money out of politics, okay, on your site, what you advocate for is really a constitutional amendment, okay, in order to get rid of, in order to overcome the CU decision. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How many years do you think it's going to take to get a constitutional amendment passed?
How much support we can get from other legislators. And what I'm going to really focus on doing is making sure that these other legislators going on so that their constituents can put pressure behind them to take action.
Right, and that's a very reasonable thing to do. But from a realistic standpoint, okay, I think we have to consider that's going to take a few years. First of all, you have a build to build a campaign so they realize how important it is. Then you have to get support from the Congress people who are getting bribed through those funds at this point. Okay, then you have to wait for the states to ratify it. Okay. So I figure it's going to take 6 to 7 years.
6 years is probably around what I was planning on it taking.
Okay. Well,
I only plan on running for one term as well, so I will have 6 years to get these changes in place, or to at least start the movement and set it up for other people to continue the movement once I'm gone, to make sure that it does happen.
Right. And I am not at all arguing that this should not be done. I think it certainly should be done. The constitutional amendment should be passed. I'm all for it. But if you and I recognize it's going to take 6 years to pass, and the question arises, what are we going to do for those 6 years? We got to get money out of politics now.
We do, but it's like you said, it's not really
right
unless we get to the point where millions of start to see what's going on. And,
right. Okay, but I know what to do now.
And what do you do now?
Okay, here's what you do now. There's a little clause in the Constitution. It's in Article 3, Section 2. And there's a phrase in Article 3, Section 2, it's called the Exceptions Clause, okay, which allows the Congress to determine the jurisdiction of the appellate courts of the United States. Of course, The Supreme Court of the United States, okay, is an appellate court. It's the chief appellate court, okay, of the United States. So you can write bills, campaign finance bills, for example, and include the exceptions clause in those bills. So those bills cannot be reviewed by the appellate courts, cannot be reviewed by the Supreme Court. You cut the Supreme Court out of the process. Conservative majority and all, you just cut them out of the process. The campaign finance laws, okay, become the law of the land. There's nothing the Supreme Court, okay, can do about it. The funds stop flowing from the corporations and from the rich. They can't do anything about it, okay, by going to the Supreme Court. That stops it. That can be done if you can get campaign finance laws passed with the exceptions clause from Article 3, Section 2 in them. So that's a solution to the problem.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just taking notes.
Okay, and I wanted you to know about that particular solution to the problem because you can put it in your campaign literature. And you can say, I'm for getting money out of politics. Okay? And I am all for passing an amendment to the Constitution, okay, to do that. But I know that's going to take me 6 years to get that through. If I'm successful, it'll take 6 years for the states to ratify it, okay, and get it into the Constitution. In the meantime, we have to stop this corruption of Congress coming from the flow of funds. And then you can tell them how you're going to do it. Just refer to Article 3, Section 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Something I'll talk about. Levy Sanders is one of my advisors, and I will be tomorrow and get his opinion and see what I can do about possibly adding this policy to my anti-corruption issues page there.
Okay, now, he may say, okay, in reply to this, well, it's dangerous to cut the Supreme Court out of the process. Okay, it's just dangerous. We've had the Supreme Court here, and at times they've been very constructive, okay, and they've protected us. Here's the reply to that. Judicial review by the Constitution, by the Supreme Court, okay, by the Budget of the United States, is not in the Constitution of the United States. The Supreme Court itself sort of placed that into the Constitution in the Marbury versus Madison case, okay, of 1803. John Marshall, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, put forward the judicial review doctrine in that case, and it stuck. Okay, it's become a tradition. Okay, it's become a custom, but it is not in the Constitution. It was a reading of the Supreme Court that placed it in the Constitution. The framers did not intend to have that. They intended for the legislature to define what the law of the land was going to be, and for the judges to arbitrate, okay, the law of the land and decide what was legal, okay, and what was not. But it didn't give them the power to interpret the Constitution.
Yeah.
So that's the answer. In other words, the answer is it's the legislature that's supposed to have the supreme power in this area. And the Supreme Court has basically taken it away from them. And the issue is, do we want to sit still for that? Okay, and you might say, in certain areas, we want to sit still for that. In other words, when it comes to, let's say, civil liberties, it might be that we want to sit still for that. But when it comes to campaign finance laws, we might not. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, real quick, Steve, I tried to reply on Facebook, but it won't let me comment. I'm in John Bozeman. Let's see here. And then running against, is that Joe Manchin you're referring to?
Yeah, he's probably referring to Joe Manchin. No, that's in West Virginia. But Dan is in Arkansas.
Yeah,
So
like Carmen
against
said,
John
that's the arsenal right there.
Okay, when we briefly talked some time ago, we briefly talked at KRTD Media in the run-up to the Solutions Conference. There was sort of a trial, okay, and I was on that, and questioning you, okay, with Shane. Okay, and you were talking about how to get money out of politics then. And so that was one of the reasons why, okay, I wanted to interview you, because I wanted to tell you about Article 3, Section 2, because that is the real short-term solution to the problem.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate it. I mean, I'm always learning. I have a very open mind, and I'm always willing to, take new ideas, talk about these new ideas, and, play them around with different groups of people, and then, implement them into my policy. So I do appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, so getting back to Green New Deal. Can you tell me more in detail about what you're, but tell me more about the policies that you would want to implement as part of the Green New Deal?
So I'm not sure. Am I lagging at all? We got a thunderstorm out here right now. It's cutting in and out a
you're
little
kind
bit.
of fading in and out a little bit, yeah.
Oh, did I lose him or did he lose me? Let's see here. All right. Either way, hopefully you can hear me just fine.
Yeah, I can right now.
Awesome. Infrastructure is going to be a really important part of it. We have to make sure that we do get the finances needed to work on our infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I'm talking about things like making sure that we have reinforced dams to handle these rainstorms that are coming, that are just creating flooding areas in areas that have never historically had to worry about flooding. We need to make sure that we are having the infrastructure available to worry about drought, like what's happening in the West Coast right now. We have to figure out how we can get water to the West Coast, because the West Coast is where the majority of our food is actually grown. And we have to make sure that we are focusing on renewable energies, of course. Thorium is something that I'm a really big proponent of. I really love thorium, and I was very disheartened to learn about the history between thorium and uranium, and to find that, uranium waste can be used to create plutonium and can be weaponized. So that's why we went away from thorium, even though thorium is actually safer, it's more efficient, and it's a lot cleaner. So I really want to see more thorium plants. We have, I believe, three different nuclear facilities here in Arkansas, and we could convert or add reactors to our current plants for about $25 million a piece, which would really help power our urban areas. And we can do this.
So question here.
Yes, sir.
Howie Hawkins says that But thorium um, is fine, but when you're all done with it, you still have the problem of disposing the nuclear waste.
So,
It's
what to do with nuclear waste? Well, the waste from thorium, let's see here. Let me find this number. All right. So here we go. So thorium nuclear waste only stays radioactive for 500 years rather than 10,000 years, which is a significant increase. It's substantially better than uranium. Now, for 500 years, it sounds like a long time, but realistically, we could store thorium for 500 years and then make sure we deal with the waste once it's no longer radioactive. One of the differences between uranium and thorium waste is that thorium has significantly less waste than uranium does, because when you are working with uranium, you're only using about 4% of the molecules, and then you have 96% waste, where it's the polar opposite with thorium. You're using about 96% of the material and only have 4% waste. So we will have significantly less waste, and it will not be radioactive for nearly as long. So we can find ways to store this. I mean, I hate this, be like, let's bury a bunch of radioactive waste in the Nevada desert like they already do. But we can definitely find safer ways to store this waste so that we don't have to worry about it being around for the next 10,000 years.
But the obvious question is, why bother? We have solar, but there's wind.
Mm-hmm.
There's geothermal. There's water. Okay, there's ocean power.
Kinetic, yes, sir.
Why would we need to go to thorium?
Well, we do have urban areas, and urban areas require a lot of power. Now, if we got to the point somehow where every single home, every business, every school, every public building had solar on top of it, if we got to the point where we had mini fields with like turbine-less wind energy, and we had kinetic different floating pads on the ocean and different things like that, I'm just not sure how many gigawatts of electricity all of this would create if it would be enough for these urban areas. Where I see solar and wind and hydro really shining is in our more rural areas where we don't have to have nearly as much electricity.
Okay, so from what I've read and heard,
Mm-hmm.
The other sources, the sources that are renewable, would easily fill all our needs. There really would not be a problem. Okay, so I think this is a matter, okay, of research, but I think there are a lot of people today who are contending that thorium just is not needed. Okay, that it may be better than the uranium kind of alternative. Okay, it may also be possible to use it in smaller reactors.
Mm-hmm.
That are fairly modular and fairly cheap to build. Okay, compared to the older reactors, but you still have the problem of perhaps having to cope with terrorism, and you still have the problem of the waste. And if you can get the power from the other sources, and you have a grid that can deliver the power to the urban areas, then there's no problem, because solar and wind power is virtually unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, someone is going to ask you the question, why thorium?
Well, what I'm looking at thorium is I look at thorium as a bridge to fusion. is really what it comes down to, because the end goal is really going to be fusion. We're just not there yet.
Why
'Cause,
use fusion? I mean,
um,
I understand the potential, okay, in fusion, but I don't understand why we need it. In other words, if the renewable sources of energy can really take care of everything, if that particular analysis is right, why would we want to go to fusion? In other words, what are the benefits?
if I could see, I'll do more research. And if I can find a way for solar, wind, and hydroelectricity to completely eliminate the need for any nuclear or fossil fuel energy in a timely manner that's going to, be within the next, say, 5 to 10 years, because that's really what our deadline is to make change, then of course I would support and be a big proponent of those clean energies. Just at this point, I haven't seen that research that shows that we could 100% transition away from fossil fuels in the next 5 years, unless we had something like thorium to really help lead the way and bridge that gap. But
Okay,
I
I,
would most
I
definitely be
don't
down.
think there's a possibility of getting enough of the thorium reactors online, say within a 5 year period, to make a dent, okay, on this particular problem. So I mean, I guess that thorium, okay, in this respect, would have the same sorts of problems, okay, as the wind and solar alternative. But I would think if these are actually alternatives to each other, then it seems to me that we need analyses that will cost out uh, and also give us the timeline, okay, on all of of the choices, okay, we have, okay. Um, I have a feeling that quite a lot of this is out there now because there are an awful lot of people researching these questions. Okay, so I agree. We need to do more research.
Absolutely. I mean, it's never a bad thing to do more research and to broaden your horizons. Like I said, I will do some research on to see if it's, possible to switch to, completely solar, wind, and hydro, and the deadline that we need to really hit. I mean, we can't take more than 10 years to get rid of all fossil fuels. If we take more than 10 years, we're going to have irreversible climate catastrophes, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yes, okay, and you and I agree about that. I think we have to get off fossil fuels completely within a 10-year period. We are in a small minority of people, who are insisting on that. Okay, but we do completely agree that we have to get off of them in 10 years.
And
Absolutely.
I will do more research on what we were just talking about and make sure I am not ignorant in any way about thorium versus solar and how fast we can move to transition away from fossil fuels.
I think you know that solar and wind energy costs, okay, are already cheaper, okay, than fossil fuels. That if we remove the subsidies from the fossil fuel industries, then the pricing, okay, of fossil fuels would no longer be in any way competitive with solar and wind.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I think that's a fact as of today, as we speak. But also, we can't forget that we have also geothermal sources. I think that, of course, it's a smaller percentage of things, but it is there, and in certain areas, it could be vital.
Oh yeah, especially like Iceland, where they have a lot of thermal activity underground. I believe Iceland is fully geothermal right now. Their citizens pay almost nothing for electric, um, and it's been very successful for them. You just have to be in those specific areas where it can be applied.
Yeah,
But where it can be applied, we should absolutely be using that 100%.
right. Uh, okay, to shift a little, What's your program with respect to housing?
Housing. So, number one, one thing that I want to do is I want to submit federal legislation for renters' rights. A lot of people don't understand what that means because most states have renters' rights, and Arkansas is the only state that does not. And what I mean by that is that landlords don't have to keep dwellings up to habitable standards. They don't have to make sure there's no black mold. They don't have to make sure there's no leaks in the roof, that the heater, the air conditioner is running, that you have electricity. They don't have to do any of those things. It could be, like last December when it was negative 10 degrees and your heater could go out and you could call your landlord and they could say, well, we're not going to fix it. And it is actually a criminal offense not to pay your rent in Arkansas. So you could be like, well, you're not going to fix my heater. It's 20 degrees inside and I'm not going to pay you rent because of that on the first. And then you can actually go to jail for that. So renters' rights are extremely important here in Arkansas for my constituents. And I want to make sure that there is federal legislation that protects Arkansans just as well as every other American. And that's as far as renters' rights. Very, very big deal and important here. We have a lot of apartments and slumlords who will be out-of-state investors come in, buy a facility, not put any money into it, let it get run down real bad, and they don't even care because they're in a different state just investing.
Yeah, sure.
Jerry, gentrification is a really big issue here in Arkansas as well. We've been seeing a lot of out-of-state investors come in, buy the cheap homes up, spend a couple $1,000s, and then double the prices on them. So that's small working-class families, especially in a state where the average household income is only $48,000, just can't afford to get a house. So we have to make sure we do have affordable housing. I think that could be part of the federal jobs guarantee to build affordable housing in different areas around the country where we have a lot of open space. That could really benefit different communities where we have counties with low incomes. We still have counties that have incomes of less than $25,000 a year household income. So we can fix a lot of these things through the federal jobs guarantee building housing. But affordable housing is very important. As a working class person who, I rented pretty much my entire life. I've been in a bunch of different apartments.
Yeah, so did
I. My wife and I, we rented our first house. Oh my gosh, I want to say back in like 2015. And we rented that house for 5 years while I worked 2 jobs and we saved up. And then we finally bought our first house a couple of years ago. And the only reason we were able to buy our house is because we bought it before those housing increases. Our house has already gone up 50% in value in the last year alone. Oh, wow. And we could have never afforded this house at the value that it currently is. So these are all issues that people should be talking about, that we've got to figure out how to make sure that we can keep homes affordable for regular working class employees and for new families starting out.
Yeah, we sure do. When I asked the housing question, I was thinking of it, though, from the Green New Deal point of view.
Can you elaborate on that real quick for me?
Sure. The types of houses we build now, and apartments, that we build now, are not very climate friendly. They leak energy all over the place. They cause us to use more energy. In Bernie Sanders's, in his plan, quite a bit of money, is devoted to renovating really the whole housing stock in the country. So it is green. In that sense, it is compatible with the climate. So this is a real important part, of the Green New Deal.
So we can look at other countries, Japan, who have already converted a lot of their housing towards making sure that there is solar on these large complexes, that they have these green areas, not green areas, but a lot of plant life and things like that. I think that just the fact that a lot of houses have old windows where you can let a lot of energy out, which can require a lot more money to heat and cool. We could do a lot of work replacing
Yeah.
side older houses, and by promote, giving money through the Green New Deal to do things, we are paying for these windows and to be built. We are paying for these windows to be in money from the that money from the Green New Deal and putting it into working people's pockets and back into our economy.
Right. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to ask you about that. Okay, I wanted to ask you about what's in your plan for a Green New Deal with respect to automobiles.
Well, sure. I can talk about that a little bit.
Go ahead.
So, of course, of major, car names switching to electric vehicles. Do need to get to the point where we are having electric and hybrid vehicles and getting rid of a lot of all these gas guzzlers. I work at JB Hunt, a transportation company, and my company is already trying to, assign deals and get contracts done with Tesla so that we can get our trucks off the road and electric trucks instead. And it's just going to take, a major change. It's going to be tough because the fossil fuel industry makes gas, which is used for people commuting to work. But through things like having high-speed rail, having public electric transit, converting our fossil fuel engines, our combustion engines to electrical vehicles, these are all things that we can do that's going to not only help the environment, but it's going to lower the cost for commuters to power these vehicles, and it's going to just be better for everything all the way around, except the fossil fuel industry who's trying to sell us a bunch of gas.
Okay, so just to point out, when you go to BernieSanders.com, okay, and look at the Green New Deal there, he's laid out, okay, in some detail, the things he wants to do for autos, for housing, for the infrastructure, okay, for electric cars and trucks, okay, and vehicles, actually replacing the whole fleet over a period of time, okay, as part of the Green New Deal. So that there are tremendous savings, okay, in power. Okay, so that's a good thing to look at, okay, and incorporate into your own plan, I think. Something like, okay, what Bernie has there. Howie Hawkins also has similar things, okay, in his plans, though I'm not entirely sure, okay, at this point, why he has a cost estimate of $41 trillion for his plan, and Bernie's is 16 trillion. Mm-hmm. But I'm not completely shocked by the $41 trillion estimate, okay, because one of the people, okay, who blogged along with me at the UMKC site back in 2013, okay, if I recall correctly, had two very, very lengthy blogs, which were entitled something like, "Why shouldn't we spend between $4 and $6 trillion a year on a Green New Deal?" It was entitled something like that. But the $4 to $6 trillion a year, of course, but that was the feature. So over 10 years, he was talking between 40 trillion and 60 trillion. And he laid out in some detail all the things that would have to be part of the plan. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's at the UMKC site, and his name is Michael Hexter, Hoexter. So I'd seen a cost estimate like that before. So when I got a look at Bernie's plan, that was estimated at $2 trillion. I kind of doubted that from the beginning, thinking it was probably too small, okay, because of Hexter's estimate. The only other person I've seen who has an estimate close to Hexter's was Howie Hawkins' estimate. Hexter is a climate guy, okay, an environment guy, who also got into MMT fairly early.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why he was blogging, okay, at the UMKC site. But he is worth taking a look at, and so is Howie, okay, because I think they're much closer to the truth as to what it's going to actually cost us. And I wouldn't be surprised, okay, if it goes above that even. The only way to pay for it, of course, would be to accept the reality that we are are actually a monetary sovereign, and that we have the power to do with our currency that which needs to be done to solve our problems, no matter how big those problems are. But if we try to apply any conventional governmental financing,
There is just no way.
it would be impossible to do the Green New Deal. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it would not survive. We
just have to, I mean, we have a choice to make. Are we going to do what it takes to make sure we keep our planet habitable, or are we not? And it's very simple, and it's just going to have to be we just have to do what it takes. We really do. And if that means convincing, or not convincing, but educating people on what it means to have a fiat currency, then that's something that we really need as many people as possible out there promoting and talking about and trying to educate people on.
Yes, and as you said, we have to get on top of this within a 10-year period.
If it's not too late already, honestly.
If it's not too late already, honestly, yes, I completely agree with you. Okay, so we can really separate ourselves out into two groups. The first group is comprised of the people who are thinking, okay, in the way that you and I are thinking. Okay, and then there are the rest of the people. And maybe from a political standpoint, we have to make that kind of judgment. Okay, and people who are in the other camp, it seems to me they don't fulfill a requirement of office right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we did things, okay, in the way they wanted us to do them, we simply wouldn't survive.
No. I mean, Death Valley just hit 135 degrees. What's it going to be at in 5 years from now? I mean, you can only live at 140 degrees for 10 minutes before you're in the danger zone.
Yes, if it goes up to 150 degrees, I don't know if we'd be able to drive through that.
These are just issues not enough people are talking about. But as we start to do things like working on getting a constitutional amendment using Article 3, Section 2, to get money out of politics, we can start to get representatives into office who are willing to look at the truth and willing to do what's best for the people, despite what it may mean, for their own finances. We just have people in politics for the wrong reason. We have career politicians, people who don't care, who are disinterested, who are just in it to make a bunch of money.
Okay, so when I was at your site, okay, I also noticed that you are for eliminating student debt.
Yes, sir. All 1.8 trillion.
Okay, all 1.8 trillion.
Maybe 1.85 now. But no, it's extremely important that we eliminate student debt. Back in 2008, during the financial crisis and collapse, we had big banks preying on Americans, illegally foreclosing millions of people's homes, and they screwed us. And you know what we did in response? We bailed them out with $16.8 trillion.
Yeah.
So if we can bail big banks out to the tune of $16.8 trillion, I think it's time those banks do us a favor and allow the working class to get rid of that giant burden of student debt, because it's going to increase productivity. It's going to increase, efficiency, morale. It's going to make people happier. It'll make the GDP go up. There's really no downside to it, except the banks aren't going to get to collect on some old debts. But that's a very important policy that I do support, as well as, providing tuition-free public colleges as well.
Okay, those are important things. And of course, you're for paid family leave also, too.
Yeah, 100%. There's just no reason that we shouldn't have paid medical leave. And at the same time, I don't really have it on my policy, but I do support making sure that we have not only PTO, but sick leave for our jobs. We can't be coinciding sick leave and PTO together, because some states have a separation, but a lot of states like Arkansas, that's a right to work state, does not. And you can't control when you get sick. And we have to make sure that people do have the ability to take the time off they need to reconnect with themselves, to de-stress, to get back to, getting in the happiness zone, especially when they're working in the corporate world. We just have to have these things to make the middle class and the working class better.
So you mentioned also federal job guarantee, okay, a number of times. Generally speaking, when people talk about the federal job guarantee today, they're talking about a $15 an hour minimum wage. Well, actually, job guarantee wage, which then would become a de facto minimum wage for the rest of the country, of course. How do you feel about that particular wage level?
Well, I think, like you said, it would make the minimum wage really irrelevant, because if you don't pay what the the federal jobs guarantee minimum wage is, people just go get one of those federal jobs and do it that way instead. So employers will be forced to raise their wages up to match that. We just have to make sure. I think there was recently that come out by Business Insider that showed that on minimum wage, you can't, afford to live as a single mom in any city in the country anymore, and that's just unacceptable. So we have to make sure that people who are contributing to society, that are working 40 hours a week, that are working full time, not only have benefits through programs like Healthcare for All, but also have paid time off, paid sick leave, and the opportunity to be able to save up to buy a house to pursue the American dream. And that's only going to happen if we increase wages. But at the same time, we also have to have protect so that as our pays increase and go up, I don't have landlords who are like, oh, well, now you're making $200 a month more, so $100 a month more in rent. So we have to make sure that we have precautions in place to, prevent the predators from taking over.
Right, such as some degree of rent control. Like that. So Dan.
Absolutely. Rent control is very important.
When I was a kid, I lived in the Bronx in New York. And I lived in a rent control apartment. Our family did. It was a nice, large, 5-room apartment. In the Bronx. When we moved in, I was 5, and I remember we paid something like $72 a month.
Wow.
And when the family moved out, which was maybe 15 years later or something like that, the rent had gone up to $90 a month. That's all. And, in all that time, it was really amazing. I don't know how good it was for the landlords, but it was sure good for us. It was a wonderful thing. The question that I wanted to ask you was, is $15 an hour enough? Strikes me. I don't know whether $15 an hour is enough for Little Rock, but I certainly know that it's not enough for New York City.
And that's a really good question. And I think that's why when I talk about a livable wage, I'm not talking about a federal standard minimum set wage. What we have to do is we have to take the cost of living into account for each county and each area that we're in. I mean, I work at JB Hunt and I'm an engineering intern. I've been there for 3.5 years, and I think I make like $15.75 an hour. So I make just more than $15 an hour. And I can tell you right now that we wouldn't be able to afford what we have if my wife wasn't making more money than I am. And, you know, I know what it's like to make $15 an hour, and it's not enough. But we have to start somewhere. And I mean, I would love to see
you have
an hour
to start somewhere. Okay, I completely agree. But if you're going into the Senate, you would be in a position to propose a federal job guarantee wage that was cost adjusted, okay, according to each of the areas, okay, that we live in. You would be in a position to specify what the wage should be for the lowest cost area in the country, okay, and then also to specify that there should be a CPI adjustment going upward from the lowest cost area to the highest cost area. And then that would make the job guarantee wage a fair wage. But you'd have to have that kind of cost adjustment in it.
Well, I would expect to submit legislation that had something closer to maybe $25 an hour. And the way that we know the GOP Republicans like to compromise with Democratic bills, it would probably end up somewhere around 15.
Somewhere around 15, yeah.
But it's because what are we going to do? Is it going to be $15 right now?
Compromise, it might well be at 15. Okay, of course, if the Democrats had any guts at all, they probably could find $22 as a compromise, as opposed to $15. But they just can't say no in the end. They just can't say no because, after all, they get something, don't they?
And so it's hard, too, because even if we pass a $15 minimum wage tomorrow, is it going to be, say, 12 on after? Is it not going to be until 2025 when we actually see the $15 minimum wage, or are they going to immediately do $15 minimum wage?
And I think
these are all really,
that is a very, very good point. Okay, that is a very, very good point. When they were trying to pass the $15 an hour minimum this year, it wasn't going to be $15 an hour this year. It was going to be $15 an hour in 2025.
And by the time we get to 2025, who knows what the cost of living is going to look like?
Well, certainly, but even in those areas of the United States where $15 an hour is enough, by 2025, it's not going to be enough for those areas. Okay, so we have to build in some cost of living adjustments. I'm not for the indexing because one of the functions of the job guarantee is supposed to be as a price anchor. Okay, so the way the MMTers talk about it is that there might be cost of living changes every 5 years or something like that, but not continuous cost of living changes over time.
So then the question is, do we just set the federal jobs guarantee wage at $25 an hour to raise the de facto minimum wage so high right away? What's that going to do for small businesses who can't afford to pay $25 an hour because they're not making that much? They'll lose all of their employees. They'll go out of business. It's really tough because, I mean, we have to look at this from every different angle because legislation most of the time has unintended consequences, unfortunately.
Right, but of course the MMTers have thought about what happens to small business in this particular situation. Okay, their answer is that if the small business is fulfilling a public purpose, then it would be subsidized by the government. Okay, so it would be able to pay the wage. But if it wasn't fulfilling a public purpose, then the judgment is the business people don't really deserve to stay in business, okay, if it means that the people they employ will be getting exploited because they won't be getting a living wage. So that's the MMT answer to that. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily correct answer, but what I am saying is that
it is an answer.
Well, it's sure to be an answer that is going to create a lot of political conflict and angst, because there are a lot of small businesses out there that only continue to exist because they are exploiting their workers.
Yeah.
And a real federal job guarantee would put them out of business. So that's a problem that we're just going to have to face, somewhere along the line. Okay, so let's get to our comments and see what we have. Let's start going through them. There are people saying hi. And Go Start, whose name is really Steve, says, what the heck's going on with Medicare for All squabbles? Well, I might be able to answer that if I knew specifically what kind of squabbles he's talking about.
I know we have some Medicare for All marches coming up. Is it the 26th? Maybe next week or the week after. I will be in Fayetteville, Arkansas, attending the Medicare for All march there. So if you're in the Fayetteville area, come out and join us. Show support for a universal system that is going to put people before profits.
The march in the 45 cities, okay, I don't know whether Fayetteville is one of those cities. That's going to occur on July 24th.
July 24th.
Right. On Saturday, July 24th. So it is next Saturday.
Whew, my schedule's getting full.
Okay, and on that day, it's going to be Washington, it's going to be in Cleveland, Detroit, Los Angeles, in 45 major cities.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, we'll have one in, I don't know if it's a smaller branch in our state that's doing it, because we will have one in Little Rock, but we're also going to have one in Fayetteville, which is about 3 hours closer than Little Rock.
yeah.
Let me see if I can find this.
So Go Start says it's gone way past the MMT squabble. Don't know what he's referring to. Carmen says, heck yeah, in response to something. I'm not quite sure what that was in response to, Carmen. Kay says, Arkansas needs a progressive. I would say Arkansas needs Dan. That's what I would say.
We need a lot of help here in Arkansas. I would hate to get into a downer mood here, but our 93rd legislative session was the worst legislative session in our state's history. We banned abortion. We banned transgender students from school sports. When schools in response to that, schools started flying pride flags. So our state legislators made it illegal for a school to fly any flag but the state flag and the school flag. We are allowing doctors to deny medical services based on their own ideological beliefs. We had a really tough legislative session, and it was really hard to watch and pay attention and to see what was going on. We added stand your ground laws. We always had a duty to retreat before using deadly physical force, if safe to do so. And now you no longer have a duty to retreat. We gave our militia, whatever the definition of militia is, the same legal authority as law enforcement. They can no longer be charged with misdemeanors while performing militia duties. All sorts of stuff. And what this did, though, as terrible as it was it really woke up a lot of people here in Arkansas, a lot of progressives who have never voted before, who've never been interested in politics. It's got them reaching out to us. It's got them wanting to vote for the first time in their lives, and it's got people wanting to run for office. So we are getting some progressives. We need some progressive help, and we really need y'all's help to share, find the progressives running here in Arkansas and help us flip our state blue. And you can do that just by retweeting our stuff, by, committing to phone bank. You can phone bank from anywhere, or even donating to different progressives campaigns. We need a lot of help here in Arkansas, but if we get the help that y'all can provide, then I guarantee you we can make sure that we maintain the Senate majority and that we do get John Bozeman out. Sorry.
But one of the first things to do, Dan, I think, is to follow you on Twitter, right?
Absolutely. I try not to be as divisive as possible on Twitter, and post some productive things every once in a while. But yeah, if you can follow me on Twitter, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you like something that I tweet, feel free to retweet it so that other people can see that message as well.
Okay, everybody, that's good. Okay, let's continue going through.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that Medicare. Let's see here.
Comments.
Find it.
Okay, Cora says the U.S. is held hostage by the right and corporations vying for the biggest state tax break. Yes, that's quite true. Steve says peaceful protesters in California got beat down and shot today. For what, Steve? In what part of California? Meanwhile, in Florida, so-called SOS Cuba protesters got a police escort with traffic blocked off. So in other words, as long as the police agreed with you, then you got a police escort. But if the police did not agree with you, as in California, then you got beat up and shot. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It kind of also depends on what your political affiliation is. I'm sure if you were wearing like Trump 2024 gear, they were probably a lot less likely to beat you and shoot you with less lethal weapons or use chemical gas and things like that on you.
Yep, I'm sure too. And Kay says the Affordable Care Act is a GOP idea. It certainly is.
I mean, it was written by the health and pharmaceutical lobbyists, like straight up. But I mean, it did help in some ways, but we just have to do better. We can do better.
Yep. Kay says, thank you, Obama. And Carmen says, the Cubans that were arrested in Florida for protesting can't bombed out because it's one of fascist DeSantis's new the Florida anti-protest laws. Man. Well, I gather those laws are going to be challenged in the Supreme Court. They may not survive, but not even in this Supreme Court. Carmen says, how ironic since the Cubans voted for Trump. Gorsuch says, I haven't seen any arrests in Florida. Before 1973, it was illegal in the U.S. to profit off health care. And Carmen says, take notes. Joe did the M4A / GDP legwork. I did.
I think Green New Deal probably, yeah. Yeah, I took, I've been taking notes. Oh, I guess you can't see them because my green screen, but yes, I've been taking lots of notes. This has been a great conversation. And like I said, this is more of a conversation, not an interview. So I've really enjoyed it so far. And I'm still not going anywhere. You got me.
Great. Great. Stay as long as you like. Steve Day says, Pharma with Obama made a huge donut hole for ACA Part D. Yeah. Is that for the ACA Part D you're talking about, or Medicare Part D? Okay, because I think, oh yes, that's right. The ACA did modify the Part D, okay, of Medicare. Okay, and there was a donut hole in there it was very large, but it went down each year. I think the donut hole is supposed to be nearly closed by now in the Affordable Care Act.
Well, fortunately, Bernie Sanders was able to just get this new budget passed, which actually should be giving the Medicare dental, vision, and hearing now, which is amazing and should have been done ages ago.
Yeah, he was able to get that into the reconciliation bill. He wasn't able to get a reduction in the Medicare age to 60.
Can we reduce it to 0?
He was told by Senator Warner, actually, Mark Warner, okay, who's my senator, that if they took the age down to 60, that the conservative Dems would not be voting for the bill. And so Bernie caved. I have to say that if it had been me, what I would have done is gone ahead with the reconciliation bill, had the House pass it.
The conservatives not pass it, and we'll get them voted out next session. Oh man.
Well, okay, it seems to me that if Schumer didn't want to cater to them, what he would do then would be to take the reconciliation bill from the House and place it on the Senate floor with no changes and force them to do an up or down vote on that. Now, Schumer actually played into their hands before the rescue plan, okay, the American Rescue Plan, because when the $15 an hour minimum wage came into the Senate, Schumer immediately took it out of the reconciliation bill and forced Bernie to try to put it back in. However, if he had decided that he wasn't going to take it out, and if the Biden administration had also decided they were going to ignore the advice, okay, of the parliamentarian, which is perfectly legal for them to do, parliamentarian, okay, is only an advisor, then Sinema and Manchin and the other 6 people who were blocking it would have had to vote on the floor against it. And I don't think they would have dared to vote against the rescue plan in that situation. $15 an hour minimum wage or not? I think they would have had to vote yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's really a lack of guts on Schumer's part and on Bernie's part as well. I mean, I think Bernie won't push things to the edge. That's not his way, okay, of doing things. And I think he loses some ground, okay, because of that.
Well, since I'm already not going to run for re-election, I plan to push things all the way to the edge, like a cat with a glass on the table. And I'm going to push them right off until we get what we need.
Well, you may find when you get in there and you work extremely hard on something, and it's not quite there, that you need that second term.
Well, what I plan to do is I won't run a re-election campaign. I'm not going to solicit donations and spend half of my time in office fundraising. I shouldn't have to ask people to give me money to spend money to convince them I'm doing a good job. My name will be on the ballot after my first term. And if I'm doing a good job, my constituents will vote for me. And if I'm not, then they won't. They'll replace me with someone who they think will. And that's how, and then I do support 12, 2-term term limits. So I would not run a third term after that if I was reelected because I was doing a good job.
So if you were doing a good job and you got your stuff through, and you actually got through 2 terms, okay, or 12 years, at that point, you'd probably be ready for a step up.
I never.
So
I don't have
where's the step
aspiration in
from the
politics.
Senate?
Honestly, at that point, I would probably focus on, finishing the rest of the time I have with my daughter. I mean, to be 20 years old, maybe a couple more years till some grandbabies coming in. I mean, I really believe that a representative should be a working class member of society and then elected to serve with honor and integrity. And then after their terms, go back to being a member of society. I just don't have any political aspirations like that.
Okay, so Steve Day says zero copays. Yeah, there are zero copays in HR 1976. There are no premiums, no copays, and no deductibles in HR 1976. Carmen Muniz says Joe is the most knowledgeable consultant in cyberspace. Thank you, Carmen. And Steve Day says Jayapal Sanders in the 116th Congress. Yes. Okay, and I left a link to the Bernie Sanders.com, which was the link that you gave me.
Yes, sir. And how he
entered it into this chat on how does Bernie pay for his major plans. Okay, but everything he said there was he pays for it with taxes.
Right?
Right?
He really stays away from MMT. I'm not sure whether or not he believes it, but I mean, Stephanie Kelton is his economic advisor. I think he just plays it safe for now and knows that he knows what he's doing to manipulate it into what's going on without people sleight of hand. I think that's a sleight of hand thing.
Right, but there's another side to that argument also, okay, and that is if in 2016 he had been running to educate people, okay, on MMT, then by the time he was ready to run again in 2020, there might be enough people who believed it, so he wouldn't have had to go through the pay-fors anymore. The whole thing is, the pay-fors are really devastating, but to a campaign. I mean, every time you want to do something, how are you going to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
The whole process, the whole pay-go process, has to be gotten rid of. Okay, it's an irrational process. It never used to characterize the federal government, even way back in the balanced budget days. When people were striving for a balanced budget, there was no pay-go process back then. Before 1974, there was an appropriations process for spending, and there was an appropriations process for taxing. And they were two different processes. Okay, and we need to go back to that. If we did go back to that, then it would be the case that what Congress would be doing, is evaluating whether we needed to have a deficit, how large the deficit should be. The deficit would not be attributed to any particular program. Okay, it would be that all the programs of the federal government involved more spending, and taxing. So that would all be very transparent. Okay, it's kind of artificial to say, as we do now, that some program costs such and such, and we tax for that program, and some other program costs something more, and we tax separately for that program. We never do that with the military budget.
Right.
We never hear them do that, with the military budget. But Bernie has to pay for all the plans, for all the nice things he wants to do for people. And he played that game. And I think he should have tried to get out of that game. Steve Day says, don't eat the donut hole RXs. Yeah. I'm not sure what that meant, Steve. I have to confess, I'm not entirely sure what that meant. Carmen says, will YouTube allow the link to remain? My answer is, if it's in the top chat, okay, in YouTube, it's not going to remain. But if it's in the public comments, okay, it's going to remain. So if you want something to remain, what you have to do is copy it from the top chat, and then you have to paste it into the public comments. And Steve says, not one single solitary elected official has attended speaking or even stated their support for the July 24th Medicare for All events. Not one. Hello, nobody. Yeah, I noticed that. And I'm not sure. I don't understand why that's the case. I don't understand why Jayapal, how she can get away with not going to a Medicare for All march, okay, in D.C., and speaking to the people. Why isn't she speaking to the people? I don't understand that.
You know what? Maybe I will go to Little Rock for that march. It's about a 3.5-hour drive each way, but you know what? I think I'm going to.
That would be good. And you'll try to speak to the people while you're there, right?
Oh, I will educate them on how we're going to pay for it and how many lives it's going to save, how much money it's going to save them, how much money it's going to save employers. I mean, I started talking briefly about how much Medicare for All is going to cost, but I didn't even really finish getting into it. I mean, because the employee will pay 4% of their income after $29,000, but the employer will be paying 7% of their income as well. So what that means is a good example would be my wife and I, we both work at JB Hunt. It's a Fortune 300 company, and we pay $860 a month for our insurance. So $860 times 12, that's $10,320 in premiums. And we also have a $1,500 deductible.
Oh my God.
Well, I know, it's insane. That's just for my wife, myself, and my daughter. And I mean, I'm a little overweight, but I'm not like an unhealthy guy. My wife is healthy. My daughter is healthy, but we're still paying $10,000 in premiums a year. Now, right now, what a lot of people don't know is your employer matches that 100%. So we're paying Blue Cross Blue Shield $10,320. JB Hunt is paying Blue Cross Blue Shield $10,320, and Blue Cross is making 20 grand getting off, making tons of money. Well, if they were to pay just 7% of our salary, so let's just say I'm gonna round at 80,000. That's like what closer to what our household income is, times 0.07. At $80,000 times 0.07. Oh, it's not really gonna work, is it? Nope. But it comes down to $5,600. So our employer is going to save about 50% of what they're paying now per employee. So employers are going to save tons of money as well. It's good for everybody all the way around. But you got to make sure you talk about the employee and the employer side because it helps everyone. Sorry, I'll stop now.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that you went into that. However, what I wonder is, why wouldn't the employers be for something where they didn't have to pay anything? In other words, if there were a national Medicare for All program that was generally funded by the federal government, okay, in whatever way it chooses to fund it.
Is this the HR 1976?
In HR 1976, it's not really entirely clear how it would be funded, okay, at this point.
Okay, gotcha.
There are some general provisions that the same taxes that apply to the ACA, okay, would be collected, and those revenues would be turned over, okay, to the Medicare for All program. And the same is true with revenues for CHIP, the revenues for Medicare. Okay, it would all be turned over and would come into the Medicare for All trust fund. But I'm not even talking about that particular program now. It's possible for us to design a program, okay, but if we get rid of the PAYGO process, okay, in Congress, such that whatever we spend for anything uh, gets actually paid for by the Fed. If we want to do offsets on it, for whatever reason, because we want to control inflation,
Mm-hmm.
or because we want to have offsets so the rich are not so rich, because they're dangers, okay, to our democracy. If we want to have offsets for some other reason, then that uh, uh, is fine. But if after we put in all the offsets, it turns out uh, we have a deficit, we all recognize such a deficit goes into the non-government sector. It's a surplus for the non-government sector. Okay? And we know that is the reality of the situation. So it's good for the non-government sector to have a surplus as long as the surplus is properly targeted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in this case, if the surplus, okay, is targeted to Medicare for all, that's a real good use of the surplus.
Oh, yeah.
Way. So, I mean, I think that's the way we should be thinking about things, and working with things. But to do that, we got to get rid of PAYGO. So that's one of the things the squad was trying to do. In other words, they did do some deals, okay, with Nancy Pelosi this time around. And for, I think both for the Green New Deal, okay, and for Medicare for All, but for the duration of the pandemic, the House was going to suspend the PAYGO rules. However, that doesn't do anything about the statutory PAYGO rules, because the Obama administration passed a law which builds in PAYGO to some extent. Now, there can be waivers under that law if the Congress chooses to waive them, but still, there's a technical thing, technicality law. There's the statutory PAYGO, and there's the PAYGO in the House. But every time Nancy Pelosi takes over the House, she puts in the PAYGO rules for the House because for some reason she loves PAYGO. I've never been able to understand why, but she's been pushing PAYGO since forever. Even when she was not the Speaker of the House, she was pushing PAYGO. Terrible. Anyway, sick care has way worse outcomes. Steve says, hello, everyone. That's when he entered. Carmen says, thank you for your reply. Hi, Steve. Hi, Kay. Steve says, our birds are dying. Our kelp, I think he meant to say kelp, and coral reefs are dying. Yes, he tries to correct it in the next comment. And in the comment after that. And Carmen writes down $100 trillion with all the zeros for us, so we know how big a number it really is. And Lana says, I like Dan so far. Yes, I think we all like Dan so far. And Kay says, no more nukes.
We spent, what is it, $6.5 trillion on nuclear weapons so far since the 1940s.
Oh, my God. That's incredible. So Carmen asked, does Dan understand hashtag MMT federal finance?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, but a little bit is a lot more than a lot of people understand. Steve Wolfbrand said, who is the guest? I just got here. Well, I answered that question before, Steve. And Lauderdale says, Karn, from what he said so far, I think so. Yes. And let's see, I scrolled down too fast for that.
Let's see, micro divide the electric grid with neighborhood storage.
Micro divide the electric grid with neighborhood and storage.
See, and what a lot of these conservatives don't realize when they talk about, phasing out fossil fuels is there are going to be so many good jobs created by this. Someone is going to have to maintain those grids. Someone's going to have to repair them. Someone's going to have to maintain the storage, batteries and things like that. These are going to be really good, high-paying jobs with benefits. I worked in the oil field for 2 years. It's crappy work. It's dangerous. It's not healthy. I've worked over diesel tar pits without respirators because they didn't have any. Breathing that stuff in for hours at a time. These are a lot of unsafe jobs. I worked 12 on, 3 off, on call 24/7. So I was working like 120 hours a week, sleep in my truck 5-6 nights a week. These are crappy jobs that a lot of people have in the oil field. And they will be replaced by so many better quality, safer jobs.
They will. They absolutely will. And of course, in some of the legislation that is going forward now, the new jobs that are going to be created by the programs will be union jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually specifying that. So that's a good thing. Steve
Absolutely.
says,
I'm all for strengthening our unions and union protections. Unfortunately, Reagan was the biggest union buster of them all after he worked for GE. Have you ever read the book by chance, Invisible Hands by Kim Phillips Fine?
No, I did not read that one.
That is a very good one. It talks about the rise of conservatism, basically from the early 1900s until Reaganism. And it explains a lot of how CEOs were able to come together, get employees and each other elected into political positions to destroy unions and to weaken the unions in America. Very, very great book if you ever have time to read it. If I could comment, I would type the name of it in here.
Okay, tell me the name again. I'll type it in.
You can comment on YouTube.
Okay, if you comment on YouTube, it shouldn't be in the top chat. Okay, it should be in the public comment, because if it goes into the top chat, it's going to disappear as soon as we're no longer live.
Got you. So live chat then.
But no, it should not go into the live chat.
Oh, go into top chat.
Oh, wait. Okay.
I've got top chat and live chat.
Okay, so maybe it should go into live chat then. I'm not sure what live chat actually means on there.
Well, I'll put it here for now.
Okay, I'll tell you what, put it in both places. Because if you paste it into both places, then it's more likely to survive.
For sure. And, this is a very eye-opening book. If I was to ever suggest 3 books to people, number 1 would be Invisible Hands by Kim Phillips Fine. Number 2 would be Dismantling the Empire. And then, of course, The Deficit. The Deficit Myth is another really good book as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a tremendous book. Yeah, boy, Stephanie did a great job there. She really did.
She woke a lot of people up. She really did. And, it's like planting a seed and letting it grow. And it's really going to change our next generation and how they think.
Oh, for years I was waiting for it. Okay. When it came out, I did 9 live streams going through the book.
Oh, wow. Nice.
2-hour live streams. Yeah, they're still on YouTube now.
Oh, man. Yeah, I did it on Audible. It was a little bit easier while I was campaigning, driving around the state. Yeah, I have a lot of audiobooks. So I drove 4,000 miles in the last 3 weeks, touring 30 different cities across Arkansas. And
so you have to have audiobooks.
Yeah, I got to find a way to keep myself, awake, alert, and driving behind the wheel. Caffeine only helps so much.
Steve Day says jobs for fire-safe forests. Yep. And Steve, the other Steve, Go Start, says, I'm multitasking. First night NASCAR, NBA Finals, and of course, Joe's Crab Shack. Oh, you're at Joe's Crab Shack right now? Sounds pretty good to me. Ghost Art says, "Yup, he knows MMT. I think he's been on RP."
I actually haven't been on Real Progressives before.
Ah, that's interesting.
Might have to, though, one of these days here soon.
Steve Day says, "Seymour Durst erected the DSMN by Stephen Day." I don't understand that at all. I think there are a lot of typos in that. And Ghost Art says, "PSA, ivermectin has been discredited." I'm sorry to hear that, Steve, but please leave a link in the chat so we can see who has discredited it and how. Steve Wolfbrand says he seems very cool. Yes, he does. Stephen Day says, "Det click TikTok." Ghost Art says, "First rule of MMT, talk about hashtag MMT." True. Steve Day says, "Ray Watts," it's Ray. Okay, it's actually Mitchell, Ray, and Watts, and collegiate course textbook. Okay, the name of the text, okay, is Macroeconomics. It's the MMT Bible right now. And that is to say, if you want to get a reference book that you use as an encyclopedia is used, that's the book to get. It costs about $70. It comes in electronic form. Okay, I have a Kindle version of it. Kay says Biden is stupid and corporate. Okay, I'm not one of those who thinks Biden is stupid. And I'm not one of those who thinks that he's severely cognitively disabled, though he has a few of the problems, okay, of the aged, undoubtedly. And undoubtedly, he is not what he once was, let's say 15 years ago or something like that. I think he's still very manipulative and very clever at certain things. And I agree, Kay, he is certainly corporate. And Shane says, "Hey, Joe. Hey, Dan." Steve Day says, "Deficit hawks take a space flight and stay out there." Steve Day says, "Stop federal debt spooking." Okay. Carmen says, that Yormuth, by John Yormuth of Kentucky, okay, had no problem getting MMT across. He's the chairman of the Budget Committee in the House, so he is Bernie's opposite number. So when they do a reconciliation bill, they have to agree on the framework. The House Budget Committee chairman and the Senate Budget Committee chairman. And of course, they're under the control, okay, of the leaders, okay, in both houses, so they have a say in it as well. Okay, so Yarmouth had some consulting from Stephanie somewhere along the line, and he also read the book fairly closely. And he had an interview, I guess it must have been about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. And he explained things, but John Yarmouth did, so simply. He really did a terrific job. Okay? A congressman. Okay? He really did a terrific job at it, I thought. Hey, it was beautiful. Carmen Eunice says, "Joe is the Hulk, okay, of MMT." Thank you again, Carmen. What that actually refers to is sometimes I get very, very angry on screen.
You wouldn't want to see him when he's MMT angry.
Steve Day says, "Spread the MMT word, Kay." Kay says, I always do where I can. And that's where Steve Wolfbrand asked whether you were running against Joe Manchin. Well, maybe Dan can move to West Virginia and then he can run against Joe Manchin.
Nah, no thanks. Arkansas is my paradise.
Arkansas is a paradise compared to West Virginia, right? Steve Day says the exceptions clause gets money out of politics. It can if you use it correctly. Kay says, no, he's from Arkansas, Steve Wolfbrand. Steve Day says, use the exceptions clause to keep money out of politics. No appeals. Yeah. So absolutely no excuse to not fight money out of politics. Joe just gave you the arsenal. Steve says, shared, where can we donate? So Steve just asked the vital question, where can they donate?
Oh, well, that's important. So you can donate one of two ways, well, one of three ways. If you're comfortable donating to Act Blue, I do have an Act Blue address. I know after the 2020 elections, some people were no longer comfortable donating through Act Blue because sometimes their money doesn't go where they want it to go. So let me go ahead and I can link my Act Blue in here real quick. And then I also can take donations through, there's an Elizabeth Warren in here. Huh. You can also donate at my website, danforarkansas.com. Let me copy and paste that in both chats real quick. And if you donate, if you go to my website and click the donate tab, there's a little area right there where you can select your amount, click donate, and do all of that. And it donates through Donor Box. But either way works. Or you can always send a check to my P.O. Box, which is on my contact at Danforth, Arkansas as well.
Right. So you are leaving this information in the YouTube chat for everyone.
Oh, yes, sir. I just put in the YouTube chat. I guess I could put it in the Facebook as well.
If you could put it into Facebook as well, that would be good because though I can see the YouTube comments and also the Facebook comments from here, the Facebookers cannot see the YouTube comments and the YouTubers cannot see the Facebook comments.
For sure. It will not let me add a comment into the Facebook chat. So that will be a link that you have to post in there. But I mean, if y'all just go to danforarkansas.com, click donate, everything's right there.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good. Okay, so it's danforarkansas.com.
Yes, sir.
And for Arkansas.com. When I make a comment, I don't know why, but it probably goes to YouTube.
Let's see here.
Yeah, danforarkansas.com. Okay, it appeared. It probably appeared in the top chat, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks like the top chat on YouTube has a bunch of different things in here as well.
Okay, what we're getting here, okay, with Elizabeth Warren is there is a person, okay, who has an account, and the name of that account, okay, is Elizabeth Warren.
Mm-hmm.
It is not Elizabeth Warren, but from what we've been able to determine, that person is basically is leaving pre-scheduled comments, which are quotes from something Elizabeth Warren, okay, has said, and they will, within a few minutes' time, leave 20 comments or 30 comments, which are full of Elizabeth Warrenisms for our entertainment. I actually don't mind that. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. There's somebody else by the name of Chaos Eng, who is whose comments are very strange, but he or she comes around every live stream and entertains us, okay, as well. And that really but doesn't bother us because they leave the comments in the top chats and then they just go away after the live stream. So
For sure.
I get excited about it.
All right. So let's see.
Okay, so I guess we had gotten through to about 10:17. Steve Day says blue skies are beautiful. Saw it last year.
Actually, I think we're, oh my gosh, still all the way up at, oh, okay. All my comments just disappeared. Never mind.
All your comments just disappeared. Why did that happen?
I don't know. But yeah, I see right there, 919, blue skies are beautiful. Saw it last year.
Okay, it's showing, okay. Oh, but do we have an hour time difference between you and I?
Yeah, it's 10:30 p.m. here.
Oh, I see. It's 11:30 p.m. here.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's why it says about 9:19 on your timestamp and 10:19 on mine. That makes perfect sense. Carmen says hook those exercise bikes and treadmills to a power grid and boom, free energy. Steve, the Ghost Start Steve says Greenland suspends the
oil exploration
because of climate change. From at AP, is that the Associated Press that you're citing there? Steve Day says that real estate appraisals are the con. Yes, they've been a con for a very long time. Kay says big money core are buying up low-income housing now. Yes, all over the United States. They're doing it, driving up asset prices. Something awful. George Stott said, hemp can do everything petrol does better.
You can convert hemp into biodiesel fuel. It's cheaper. It's more efficient. It burns cleaner. And I would love to tell you about my ideas for hemp for the state of Arkansas, but that's a state issue, not a federal issue. And we're already 2.5 hours in, so I won't waste y'all's time.
Okay, but someday I would like to hear about that because that's real interesting.
Yeah.
Carmen says, older shipping containers make good living spaces, economical and upcyclable and portable. And Kay says, my low-income apartments suck bad. Steve says, Doc is giving a very tough interview to this guy, but the guest is very nice. Steve, you thought it was a tough interview? You should see me when I give a tough interview. I mean, that was a conversation. It wasn't a tough interview. Kay says, I couldn't breathe in there when I got it cold, and I had to close it all up. Mold, cat dander, and who knows what else in there. Carmen says, bring Fred Flintstone mobiles back and watch fat melt away during global warming. Ghost Start says, yabba dabba. Okay. Kay says, they didn't even change the carpet in mine. It was filthy, and they need to paint the cement floors too. Steve says, Doc, let the man talk.
It was a good conversation. I've had a good time.
Kay says, hate to say it, but judging from what all is going on all over the world, it might be too late already. Hope not, Kay. Steve says, a very good guest. Yes, that is very true. Karen says, businesses and corporations are making it clear they're raising prices simply because people, workers, are standing to their exploitations. No one wants to catch COVID for slave wages, die. I don't think they want to catch COVID even for very good wages and die. Steve Day says the living wage in the federal job guarantee needs a reasonable adjustment, probably needs county level adjustments, and maybe even lower sometimes. And Ghost Start Steve says there are a number of countries who have declared a climate emergency. America is not one of them.
It's because the fossil fuel industry owns a large portion of our legislators, unfortunately.
And they own our president too, I think.
I agree.
Steve Day says subsidize small business to meet the living wage challenge.
Or at least they run his executive cabinet. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, well, he's the one who hired the executive cabinet, right?
Yeah. I have to be careful what I say.
So he must have known what he was getting, though.
Well, it's not like he didn't tell us that nothing would fundamentally change.
He did. He did absolutely tell us that. And that too many of us voted for him anyway.
But I mean, what was the alternative, unfortunately?
At the time, it was Bernie Sanders. I wasn't referring to Trump. I was referring to the primary.
Yeah, we definitely need ranked choice voting. That's going to change the world for America. We definitely need ranked choice voting.
Yeah, Biden still would have probably won, though, even with the ranked choice voting, don't you think?
I don't know. Bernie had a solid lead until COVID. He won the first states.
Yeah, he won the first 3 states in terms of the popular vote.
Yeah.
Okay, he did not win the delegate vote, okay, in Iowa. But then in South Carolina, of course, he got beat very, very bad because of Clyburn. He got beat very, very bad, okay, in Alabama. And he got beat bad in every southern state. But also, by the time Super Tuesday rolled around, 2 days after South Carolina, or 3 days after South Carolina, I forget. Of course, there was the consolidation of the field there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that meant, okay, that Biden got a really big advantage in Texas.
My wife is giving me that look, so
maybe my wife was giving me that look too, but that's all right.
It was a very quiet, subtle look.
Getting our looks because I know she's smiling at me, and she has a great smile.
I can tell mine's getting mad. She turned the air conditioner off.
Okay, well, feel free. I am.
Let's keep moving through these. Oh man, let's see. So I mean, Carmen, hey, Independent, Ellen, pleasure that you're here. Let's see, Carmen, Arkansas sounds like fascist Florida. Oh man, it is so terrible here. Just think of it this way: the Republicans have a 78-22 supermajority in our House, and they have the supermajority in the Senate. Our governor, secretary of state, attorney general, commissioner of the lands, treasurer, every position is held by a GOP Republican in our state. It's very red here. 66% of the Republican legislators in our state last year ran unopposed.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, let's see.
There's a comment, okay, from Indie Left News. A small business that can't afford to pay a living wage does not deserve to exist or survive as a business.
Mm-hmm.
And Indy says, hi, Carm. And Indy points out Ghost Start is here. Yes, that's all true. Steve Wolfbrand says B. I don't know what that means. Carmen says, hey, Indy left. Pleasure that you're here. Ghost says, Island, Arkansas sounds like fascist Florida. Guess I just caught up to you. And I think that's but Katie Johnstone, Cade Oz. I think Ghost Start is giving us a comment of Katie Johnstone, who says, telling anti-imperialist socialists not to fight with the progressive Democrats who are neither anti-imperialist nor socialist is just telling them to shut up and let the Democrats control the left. I would say yes, it is, except I consider myself a progressive Democrat. Well, I don't know if I would consider myself a Democrat, but I'm certainly a progressive. And it turns out that I am anti-imperialist, terribly anti-imperialist. And I wouldn't call myself a socialist, though many others probably would call me a socialist. But I don't call myself a socialist because when I was growing up, to be a socialist, you had to be for control of industry by the government. Okay, and I am not entirely for that. Okay, I'm kind of agnostic about that. In other words, where the government will do a better job on something, I want the government to do that job. If there are industries where the private sector can do a better job, then I'm agnostic about it. The private sector can do the better job, as far as I'm concerned. So I'd probably be considered very imperialist and very socialist, especially by most people on the right. But I don't consider myself to be socialist. However, to interpret that, in the proper way, there's Bernie Sanders, who considers himself to be socialist, a democratic socialist. He always says that he is. I'm probably somewhat to the left of Bernie Sanders, but I wouldn't consider myself socialist. So there's a problem with these labels, you see. There's just a problem with the labels. Indy says, at Ghost Start gets it, and I appreciate your support so much. Thank you, Indy. And Chaos Sang says, Howie Hawkins might own a spoon. Carmen says that Dan is so kind. He is. Chaos says, why haven't you quoted Professor John Joy Jung in Jin Hung the Eighth? Chaos likes to entertain us, with nonsense. He says, in 1935, I was on the radio doing MMT interviews. Well, there was no MMT until 1994, Chaos. So, Chaos, you show me no respect. And then he says, he. Okay, I'm not going to read most of what Chaos says. Kay says, the rich need to pay too. Ghost says, Joe, are you sure you're not a physicist? You know all the angles. Oh, God. And Carmen says, catch a train to Little Rock. Dan, you can relax along the way. Carmen says, you can carpool with someone. Maybe other Medicare for All attendees put out an ad or a post online. That might be a good idea. You can talk to people on the way there and on the way back. Maybe get some campaign workers that way.
I'll probably just drive down there and listen to audiobooks. I'm making my way through the anti-federalist papers right now.
Carmen says, I especially can't wait for the general strike on 10/15/21. I hope I'm well enough to go. It should be cooler by then. It should be cooler by then, yes. And I certainly hope that you are well enough to go. Okay, Elizabeth Warren has started to put her comments in. I'm not going to read them because I know they're all quotes, from Elizabeth Warren and don't have anything directly to do with this stream. So Ghostar says, I estimate 10 to 15% of the Delta strain are vaccinated. 2 athletes positive for COVID-19 in Olympic Village, say officials. And Elizabeth Warren is treating us to some comments that she treated us to the last time that I was on. Okay, says the squad needs Nina Turner. I'll scroll through. You see all these comments come at 11:13 and 11:14. So they're obviously programmed comments by some bot. Ghostot says, so not just then hashtag, but work it girl. Didn't quite understand that, Steve.
It's just a go at the Elizabeth Warren.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff came from Elizabeth Warren. And Ghostart has put in an icon that I can't understand in my interface, but it's there.
It's a laughy face emoji.
The laughy, good. Kay says, my grandson works in the frack gas biz. He doesn't realize how dangerous it is. Shake my head. And Dan comments, Kim Phillips fine, invisible hands. Okay. Cool. Dan Whitfield says, again, Kim Phillips fine, invisible hands. Okay, Elizabeth Warren says, won't read that. Kay says, he won't listen to me either. Don't know who he is. Kostat says, and why did you throw Bernie under the bus? Hashtag bad idea. Who threw Bernie under the bus?
He's just responding to the Elizabeth Warren comments.
Oh, I see. I see. In spite of the fact that that's not really Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth Warren ignores that comment because Elizabeth Warren is a bot. So Lotta says, I have the macroeconomics textbook signed by Ray and Mitchell. I just need Martin Watts if he comes back from Australia.
Awesome.
But I think Martin Watts actually lives in Australia, right? He's an Australian, as is Bill Mitchell. They're both Australians, but I think Bill gets over here more often. More from Elizabeth Warren. Lana says, Representative John by Yarmouth is awesome. Carmen says, yes, Lana agreed. And Ghostart says, Act Blue. Was included in the DNC lawsuit I was party to. Bitch didn't return my money. Joe Firestone.
That's why I have another option to donate through DonorBox. Some people just don't trust Act Blue, so if you don't, DonorBox is available to you. Gives my wife a lot more work when she's doing our FEC filings, but she's awesome.
So dadforarkansas.com was my comment, and Carmen notes that EW is a bot. Kostar says, oh, that's why she never replies. Chaos is not a bot, just a troll. Chaos says, you haven't asked Dan my question. Of course not. I didn't think it was a serious question. KRTD Media says it was a mildly tough interview. Shane, you think I'm tough? KRTD Media says the alternative was voting third party or staying home. Well, that was in the Trump race, not in the Bernie primary. Ghostot says, so Arkansas is what Ohio has to look forward to?
Oh.
Kay says, sounds like Ohio, my POS state.
Awesome, Lana. It's a great book. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's quite an eye-opener. It talks about the people behind closed doors who influenced a lot of the political change in our country.
I take it deals with Lewis Powell quite a lot.
No, I mean, it goes back further than that. I mean, we're talking about Henry Ford, DuPont, all the way back.
Right, but though they had established a great deal of control by 1929, they also lost a lot of it during the 1930s, and the period of the 50s, and right up till the 60s. And so they had to introduce a new plan to regain control. And that started with the memo they commissioned from Lewis Powell before he became a justice of the Supreme Court. Okay, and that memo laid out a plan for them to basically take over the system again. And they pretty much have followed that plan over a lengthy period of time.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, Google, Lewis Powell. It should be okay in Wikipedia. Okay, and I believe his first name is Lewis.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
He was a corporate attorney, and he later became a justice of the Supreme Court. If I recall correctly, he was appointed by Jerry Ford. Okay. Lana says, okay, and the title of it is the Powell Memorandum. There is a memorandum he wrote as a report to his corporate sponsors. Okay, and that's what laid out his plan for taking over.
Was that the document that wasn't released, that was known about, but not released until after he was in the Supreme Court?
I don't think it was released until after he died.
Okay.
I don't think it was known about at the time, generally known. Okay, I think if it had been known, he probably would have gotten blocked and would not have been able to join the Supreme Court. He was the first one to begin to do decisions in the Supreme Court that actually favored increasing the influence of money in politics. There's a very famous case, whose name escapes me, at this point, that he wrote the opinion for, I believe it was in 1976. And that's what started the reinterpretation of what the Constitution, it led to the giving of individual rights to corporations.
So the beginning of Citizens United.
Yeah, it was a precursor, to Citizens United, a precedent that was very important, in leading up to it. There were actually a series of such decisions between the 1970s and the CU decision in 2010. And of course, everything was greatly accelerated by John Roberts when he came onto the court, and by the other judges who were members of the Federalist Society. They've now just about taken over the Supreme Court. I mean, people from one society, it's just an astonishing development. Watts was at the first two MMP conferences, not sure when he will return. Thank you, Lana. Carmen says, I won't leave Australia right now. They have better health care. COVID is still dangerous. Yes, they are managing COVID extremely well in Australia. They recently had a spike. They shut it down in just a few days, just like that. They're still at 35 fatalities per million there, which I so wish we had 35 fatalities per million. But New Zealand has only 5 fatalities per million.
We still have counties here in Arkansas with less than 30% vaccinations. We are the epicenter here of the Delta variant because people won't get vaccinated and the unvaccinated won't wear masks. It's a shame. We were down to around less than 100, 200 cases a day. And we've been up over 1,000 cases a day now for almost the last week.
Oh
I think
my
we even hit 1,500 cases per day, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but our population is only 3.3 million.
That's
So we have the highest cases per capita in the entire U.S.
Which probably means you're soon going to have the highest fatalities per capita in the United
Per
States.
capita, yeah. We're approaching 6,000 fatalities right now.
For how many millions of people in Arkansas?
3.3.
3.3 million, 6,000 fatalities. Carmen says, okay. Kay says, thank you for another great discussion. Glad to hear about you, Dan, for Arkansas. I lost the thread. Got it back. And Ghost says, we're up to our eyes in Haiti. Yes. Then there's a bunch of Elizabeth Warren stuff. Elizabeth Warren says, I am not a bot. He. I think Elizabeth Warren and Chaos Eng are probably the same person. I'm starting to believe that.
John Perkins.
Books by John Perkins opened my eyes. Which books by John Perkins, Carmen? Ghostot says, the lobbyists write the laws. Well, they certainly wrote the Affordable Care Act. That's for damn sure.
Mm.
In fact, one of the lobbyists that wrote the Affordable Care Act was the mistress of Max Baucus. The reason I didn't back Bernie was because, this is something from Elizabeth Warren, so I don't have to read that. Ghoststart says, Ghoststart laughed at something. Ghoststart says, EW is funnier than Chaos. Yep, and Lana says, Powell did a lot of damage. Absolutely. Cass says, my question for Dan is why doesn't he support Professor Wu in Japan who practices MMT? And also, he hasn't mentioned Japan uses MMT. So I keep explaining to you, no, the Japanese do not use MMT. What they're doing.
I will look up a Professor Wu.
Oh, no, that's not real. That's not real.
I'll Google it and take a look, just see what it says.
Okay. Professor Wu in Japan.
Add it to my notes.
Okay. I don't think Wu is a Japanese name, is it? It's a Chinese name, isn't it? And KS says I was on TV in 1915 talking about MMT. There was no TV in 1915, KS. And there was no MMT either. Joseph says, everyone's calling Blinken, quote, Skinny Pompeo. That is good. That is a good one. Skinny Pompeo. I got to remember that. Yes, on Tuesday, I will be covering West Exec Advisors, the scandal of West Exec Advisors. Tony Blinken's place. Joe, I've been giving you a whole bunch of sources to cite, and you've used none of them. Chaos, that's because I know they're not really legitimate sources. Carmen says, keep taking that vitamin D3. We are doing that, Carmen. Thank you for the advice. Lana says, sorry to hear about all the COVID cases. Kay says, thank you all. We love you all. We love you too, Kay. And Dolores says, thank you for a great discussion. And Dolores says, I hope you come back, Dan. And Lana says, I wish you the best in your Senate race. It will be fab to have a much needed MMT knowledgeable progressive, especially in the South.
Well, thanks, Dolores and Lana. I appreciate it. And it was a great discussion. I've got tons of notes. I've got research to do, keep me busy. And we'll have to have another discussion here soon where we can focus on policies that we didn't talk about today.
Okay, and by the way, if you have any questions that you want to ask me about anything, just feel free to call. We're friends on, Facebook now. It can be called there. We could schedule a StreamYard meeting, okay, or a Zoom meeting.
For sure.
I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, Dan.
I appreciate it, Joe.
Okay. Forgot the total title. Okay, I won't send you a bill either. Carmen says Jackals, correction.
Well, I only make $15 an hour, so I won't be able to afford it if you do.
Don't worry. Don't worry. This work doesn't involve sending people bills. Lana says, I'm going to sign out now. Good night. Thank you for coming, Lana. Thank you for your comments. Good night. Ghoststar says, I haven't been able to find anyone. Chaos purports. Ghoststar says, go, Dan. KRTD Media says, great interview. Dolores says, good night and sleep well all. Well, we made it, Dan.
I started early too. We had the state Democratic Committee meeting today starting at 8 o'clock this morning. So it's been a long day.
Well, I have to admit that I wasn't up at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I was up at 7. I had to get all of my different camera equipment stuff ready because I had been on my campaign tour and had taken everything with me. So.
Oh, wow.
But
okay, well, I wish you very good luck as well. I'm certainly in your corner.
Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Like I said, I've still got a lot to learn. I'm always learning. I'm not afraid to learn. And I think that's what makes us grow and better. And if we could have more representatives who are willing to learn, I think we'd already be in a better place.
So do I. So do I. Ghoststar says the stroke of midnight, and Chaos says good morning.
Good morning to you as well.
Okay, good night, everybody. I'm going to end the broadcast. Carmen says, nice meeting you, Dan. You're so valuable for the people.
Oh, thank you, Carmen. I appreciate it. And if you guys ever do have any other questions or anything, my website's danforarkansas.com. You can click contact. My phone number's on there, my email. Send me a message on social media, a text message. I respond to all my own stuff, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay, thank you for a great conversation, Dan.
Thank you. You have a good night, Mr. Joe.
Okay.